when someone says, "Can I be honest with you?" It's like, what the heck? Does that imply that you've been lying to me up to this point? Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Zane.
Great to be here. It's interesting, where I've been wanting to do these podcasts and coming up with I guess a title, because it seems like everybody needs a title or something to catch people's attention. And what kept resonating with me was, let's be honest. And I know you and I have talked about that a bit, just how our society today has changed in terms of the times that we aren't honest, and it's almost become a demand of society that we kind of play along with it. And I'm not seeing where that's productive or even where it's positive in our lives. And so when we talk about let's be honest, let's be honest. Like we talked before we started this morning about the incidences in our lives where we're not honest, but we've decided it's acceptable or maybe even necessary, where, let's say, a young child, we've got a 4-year-old in the house and we hear a crash in the next room, and mom runs in and looks at the 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old's got his hands up and says, not me, and no one else in the room. There's nothing else could have happened. And what's mom say? Okay, this is a learning lesson. This is a time that I have to be somewhat strict with my child and let them know, listen, we don't lie in this house. And so there's the lesson, and hopefully the 4-year-old gets that point. But then let's say later in the day, the 4-year-old happens to be listening to mom on the phone, and mom says, yeah, tomorrow sounds good. 4 o'clock should work. And then she gets off the phone and says, oh, shoot, 4 o'clock's not going to work for me. But I don't really want to call him back. So if we were honest, what would we do?
We just call back.
We just call back.
Sure.
But it's acceptable now to, break appointments and say, oh, something came up. Oh, I got stuck in traffic. That's why I'm not going to make it. Instead of just making the phone call. So we've got these, I guess, socially acceptable incidents where they seem relatively small, but then as we go through life, and the honesty becomes either less regular or it's more acceptable to, and I don't like using the word lie, but that's what it is.
Sure.
Where we might see a friend out somewhere that we haven't seen in a while and say, hey, gosh, Roger, you look great. Well, last time we saw him, Roger's gained 70 pounds or 60 pounds or whatever it is. And so what if we're lying to Roger because what we really want to tell him is, Roger, gosh, you're not looking so good. You don't have good color. You've gained 60 pounds. What's going on? Let's talk about it. And maybe Roger's just hoping that someone will reach out and be honest and allow him an opening to sit down and talk about what's going on in his life.
Right.
But we miss that.
Do you think that this is a function of how we're raised as teenagers at this point? Because one of the big things that psychologists know about rule followers is if you are a rampant rule follower, just like to the T, you develop anxiety and depression overwhelmingly, because at some point you develop a sense that there are so many conflicting rules and so many conflicting principles that there's no one perfect course of action. So people that are very staunch rule followers end up being very, very anxious and tend towards depression. People that aren't rule followers at all, especially as 15, 16, 17-year-olds, become extremely antisocial, and they don't have a great existence either, because if you tell them a rule and they're like, I'm going to do the opposite of that, you can see where that gets them in life. So
sure.
The proper arrangement for teenagers is to recognize that they're going to break some number of rules and tolerate that to a degree, right? If you're a parent, you don't want your kid to be anxious and depressed, but you also don't want them to be antisocial. So you have them play within these two lanes where it's like, all right, I know you're lying about last night. Because what's the number one thing teenagers say? Parent asks, hey, how was Saturday night? It's Sunday morning. Kid says, fine.
Oh, it was great.
What'd you guys do? Nothing.
We just hung out.
You know they didn't do nothing. You know they didn't just hang out. But you also you don't want them to stop talking to you as if they're talking to you in the first place right now.
Well, as teenagers, yeah.
Right. You don't want to drive them away. You don't want to make them too afraid of the bad decisions they made last night. And it's this big problem. So what you end up doing is tolerating mostly probable lies, right? Where the teenager says something it's probable that they it's probable that they just watched a movie. It's possible. It's not like, but come on, you probably didn't just watch a movie.
Yeah, and agreed. So we carry that, your example, you're talking about teenagers.
Sure.
We carry that into the world. Teenagers get into, schooling, college. There's socially acceptable lies, if you will, or the other is omission of the truth, where we just don't come out and say it. Way long time ago when we were growing up, well, moms would say, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Well, the same thing is true. If you feel like you can't tell the truth, then just don't say anything at all.
Right.
Okay. So the truth might be, if you're talking about teenagers and they hung out, say, well, yeah, the truth is, we snuck out. Maybe it's innocuous. Maybe it's nothing bad at all. They just don't want to tell the parents. Yeah, we snuck out and we went over to, whatever.
Jimmy's house.
Bobby's house or something. And you know that your parents don't really care for Bobby.
Right.
Maybe his parents aren't the greatest, or maybe he hasn't, maybe he's been in trouble, whatever. You just want to leave that out.
Right.
So you say, oh, we just hung out. We just had some, we had some fun. We had some friends over.
Sure.
But then you carry that into, oh, well, okay, in school or in college, why didn't you get the assignment done? Oh, well, what's a socially acceptable? Well, because I was at the game supporting our sports team, and that's why I didn't get it done. Or, when you realize, wait a minute, there's 24 hours in a day. You might have been at the game 2 hours. Okay, so let's tell the truth. And the truth is, you know what? I completely blew it off.
Right.
I should have got it done. I knew I should have gotten it done, but I didn't. The key of it is the socially acceptable omissions of truth, if you will, versus a just flat out lie. They get worked into our skin. They get worked into our everyday life, to where as we progress in adulthood and we're trying to build successful lives, we start believing some of these lies, and that's where the real problem occurs.
I have a dear friend, Max, and we were going through Berkeley together. We were not liberals. We were there for very specifically for academics. He got into the engineering school. I mean, it's a very, very bright guy, and we were both athletes as well, struggling through our days. Life was hard. Fine, right? When we self-selected this course of action, and we were there doing it. Max was so good at coming up with excuses, and the requirement for his honesty was so low that by the end of senior year, Max actually had a breakdown it was like the last semester where I remember him telling me, he was sitting down, he's like, this paper was due 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. And I have literally said things to people all throughout my time here that allowed me to turn things in months late. In one class, he actually turned in a slew of assignments literally on the last day of class. And the person looked at him like, these were due 2 months ago. Max came up with some very eloquent, justifiable reason, no consequence. He lost it. Like, he had a mini breakdown, and he actually wrote an email to his professor saying, I have no reason this has not been turned in the last 6 weeks. I have no verifiable or lie or like anything. Please treat me with the utmost reality, like for somebody who has literally just turned it in 6 weeks late for no reason. And his grade went down a full grade.
As it should.
As it should. But it was amazing that if given enough opportunity to squirrel out of responsibility and meet deadlines, this person who was otherwise wanting to be a steadfast stand-up person couldn't find any reason to be steadfast and stand up. He wanted the world to have sharper edges to force him to be a better person. Yeah. And it wasn't. And he lost his bananas over it. He's like, what am I doing? Like, what are these people doing? I should be deducted full grade points for this. And they just say, okay.
Yeah. And to your point, we've actually put dishonesty, if you will, socially acceptable omission, whatever you want to call it, lies. We've put these into everyday life to where now with our social media and with our news organizations, we've actually made being honest somehow not politically correct. Where if I see my friend Roger and I haven't seen him in, I don't know, 5 years, and he's gained 60 pounds, and I say, my gosh, Roger, you've gotten fat. What is that? That's body shaming. That's offensive. I am the one that's wrong, even though I'm just observing that he's gained 60 pounds. Okay, and we've got this society where not only are we supposed to lie, or at least omit the truth, we're supposed to avoid even talking about it. And this is where the problem comes in. And this is where when I talk about let's be honest, because what we want to do is something constructive. What we want to do is something positive in life and be around people that are positive. But when we allow those lies to propagate, or where we do say socially acceptable, where we say, gosh, Roger, you look great. What does that allow Roger to do? Now, I'm not saying we're supposed to go out of our way to change his life or to force him into something. Say, Roger, you gained 60 pounds. Let's talk about it. Let's help you lose that weight. Let's get you into a workout program. Let's talk about what you're eating. All these different avenues of helping Roger. But when we say, Roger, you look great, that sends him or allows him to continue down this road. Whatever road has happened, he might be wishing that you would reach out to him and say, Roger, buddy, can we sit and talk? Because 5 years ago, you were a whole different person than I see today.
Right.
And Roger might not be strong enough at this point to reach out and ask for that help. But if he's surrounded by a group of people who are honest and say, gosh, Roger, you don't look so good. Do you want to, let's have coffee, let's talk about it. Okay, and take that responsibility of being honest with Roger. Because what happens if we don't? And what happens if Roger never gets that opportunity to have a friend or have someone around him, bring out the truth? Okay, what's happening? Because whether Roger accepts it or not, whether he has a loving family or not, whether he has children that really need him, Roger's going to develop diabetes. Roger's going to develop heart disease. Roger's going to have a heart attack or going to have a stroke. He's going to have knees that need to be replaced. He's going down a road that's really, there is nothing good about being 60 pounds overweight. And if we stop and say, okay, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. I know Roger's maybe not ready to hear this, or maybe he's hoping that someone will do it. If we're just truthful and say, Roger, you don't look so good. Let's sit and talk. Okay, and those are the kind of friends I really want to be around. Those are the people I want to be around.
Right, and those are the people that are actually going to save you from what everyone knows is going to happen, right? So let's say Roger's a single guy. You gain 60 pounds. Everyone around him is telling him he looks great. You look great, Roger, but he's 60 pounds overweight, pure fat. He's not going to get dates. And now Roger's going to have to confront the reality of the world, which is women are not interested in me, assuming Roger wants to go on dates with women.
Sure.
Women are not interested in me, yet everyone is telling me I look so great. What's going on with the world? Those people develop incredible levels of cynicism and hatred towards the world because they have disassociated themselves with the problem. Roger's 60 pounds overweight, Roger, or 100 pounds overweight, whatever it is. Roger is responsible, at least in part, for the fact that women are not interested in him. But everybody removes that association, so Roger feels better about himself. But now it becomes the world. Women are just unfair. The world is unfair. There's no association with, if I did this, then I might be able to improve my chances. So now Roger is living in this horrible world where women are terrible. No one's interested in him, even though Roger is this perfect specimen.
Yeah, and
that is hell.
Could be a great guy, and he could change. And then there's the other end of not being honest, and that is we allow excuses or lies to propagate. And so all the things you just mentioned, all the negatives about Roger, but we might look at Roger and say, hey, look great, and allow Roger to say, yeah, I might have gained some weight, but I didn't gain as much as this friend of mine did. And so we find someone who might be worse off than us. You talk about this with alcoholism or alcohol consumption, where, you say, well, yeah, I drink 2 or 3 drinks a night, but it's nothing like my friend, whatever, Lou. He drinks a bottle of vodka every night. So I'm not, And by the way, I'm a happier guy when I've had a few drinks. So instead of someone stopping, and again, let's be honest, alcohol is probably not the best thing for you to drink every night. Let's stop and talk about it. Let's take that responsibility. Let's step out of our comfort zone. And these are the kind of people I would hope to have around me.
Right.
And where they are honest, and they're not going to propagate some situation just to be comfortable, just to be socially acceptable, or to be, the PC. Say, hey, you know what, dude, you're going out 2 or 3 times a week, and you're really drinking a lot of alcohol. Let's talk about it. Let's sit and let's go through why you're doing that. Are you uncomfortable with something? Are you frustrated? Are you,
What's stressing you in your life?
Yeah. But then he might be, well, hey, I'm just doing it to loosen up. I'm really stressed right now. It's just the time of life I'm in. Say, no, it's not, because you've been doing it for the last year, and you haven't been in this, stressful situation for a year. Well, maybe he has, but still the answer is not, let's drink alcohol to, make me more popular.
Right. And how much better do you feel on Monday morning if you've been on a bender all weekend? Are your stresses from work better? Are your stresses from your family better? Are the problems you might be having with your kids better? They're not better. You just zoned out for a weekend, and now you have to recover.
Yeah, you're zooming in on exactly the thing, because when we're not honest, that allows this avalanche. We talk about kicking the can down the road. Well, we're not kicking the can down the road. We're rolling a snowball down a hill, and that snowball is getting bigger and bigger. The problems are getting bigger. So, like you said, what's happening Monday morning? Okay, Roger's taking care of his stress by drinking too much. Nobody's talking to him about it. All of his friends are saying, yeah, Roger, you're a great guy. Let's go party. Next week, oh, I didn't get the work done I was supposed to. I promised my boss to get that report. Okay, so things cavalcade, and like you say, what happens with the kids? Well, as a parent, you're setting an example. Just like the little 4-year-old when we first started talking, and obviously the 4-year-old did whatever happened. A vase fell off a counter, and he knocked it off. And, Mom, I didn't do it.
Right.
But then he says, well, I can do that because Mom tells her friends all the time that, she's going to be there at 4:00, and she has no way she knows she's got another appointment at 3:30. There's no way she's going to make 4:00, that kind of thing. So as Roger goes through, what kind of example is he setting for people around him? Right. Okay. My hope is for you and for me and for my kids is I set a standard. I set an example. And are we going to set that example of being popular or being politically correct and yet lying? Or are we going to be honest? Because at some point, honesty is going to come out. The world's going to force us to be honest.
Right.
Roger, 60 pounds overweight, guess what? The world is going to force him 10 years from now or 8 years from now or whatever it is. Nobody knows. Roger's going to have some health issues. And he's going to I wish somebody helped me realize this. I was realizing it myself, but nobody was around me helping me. Nobody stepped out of their comfort zone. And it's not that he's going to blame it on anyone, but where could we have helped? Where could we have stepped in? And people ask, why do you talk about these things? Because it doesn't do me any good. Here I am, 64 years old, and, I'm still leaning on people. And am I leaning on them, or am I helping them to be truthful?
Right.
And that's the key,
Right.
Hopefully the people around me are just as honest with me as I am with them. And I've got this group that's a support group. So I know I'm not going to get out of my lane very far. I'm not going to get out in the weeds because I've been living a lie of one way or another. And it could be weight, where we're talking about with Roger. It could be with our kids. I'm not going to raise my kids allowing them to get away with things. Okay. So if I'm going to ask them, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Let's talk about it. And hopefully they know Dad's going to be honest with me. He's going to be fair with me. He's not going to take anything out on me, but he's going to want the truth. And sooner or later, the truth is going to come out.
Right.
You know,
because the world will ultimately, in the short term, the world is a voting machine. But in the long run, it's a weighing machine. Like, it will give you exactly what you weigh. Because in the short term, you can surround yourself with enough people that will give you their vote. They're like, no, you look great, Roger. Oh no, it's no problem. But ultimately, the world will give you exactly what you have coming.
Yeah.
And the one thing you were saying that an important point. I used to do a lot of professional fighting, and we had a stable of just absolute killers surrounding us. People asked why we trained so hard, even when we weren't preparing for fights. And the real answer is, I don't prepare for fights. I'm always ready for a fight.
Yeah.
I've taken several professional fights on like 4 days notice. It doesn't matter to me, right? Because I was training that hard anyway. But the other thing is, look, the idea of a fighting camp at some point, I understand that some people fighting at the highest levels of UFC, they can't train at that peak performance all the time. But for the rest of us mere mortals who are not, making millions of dollars doing this, you surround yourself, if you turn on and turn off with your training partners, you surround yourself with people that are letting small lies go. You got me today because of this thing, or like, but the person knows that they could have actually fought harder, they could have trained better, they could have been more precise, and maybe it wouldn't have worked. If you train around enough of those people for long enough, that will allow small things to go, when you ultimately face the world, which is another competitor in front of 40,000 people, you're going to receive honesty. You're going to see if your training partners were lying to you and trying to pump you up and make you feel good about yourself, or if they were doing everything they could to find every single hole in your game. And a lot of the people that I think wander through the world that prefer lies are not people that are actually up against the world. You have a large portion of the population that are kind of just getting along with it and just going day to day, working paycheck to paycheck. Nothing that they're doing is of real consequence. But if you're, say, an entrepreneur, a business leader, or somebody who's genuinely making decisions that have gravity to them, they need to believe that the thing they're doing is the right thing in the world's view, in the financial view, in the product view, in all of these different things. You have to surround yourself with people that are going to be brutally honest. And if you don't, you're dead. But most people are not put in that position.
Well, and we can talk about, what's acceptable to people, society, whatever it is, but there's universal laws that cannot be broken. And when we talk about honesty, we have to be honest. And just like you said with the fighting, the more you're around people that force you to be brutally honest with yourself, and brutally honest I shouldn't even need to use that term brutally. Right. Honest should be
just honest. It is what it is.
There is no degree of honesty.
Right.
I remember, I was in a board. I was on a board for an organization, and one of my fellow board members said, "We'll need to discuss this, and we'll have to polish the truth." And I just looked at him and I said,
polish the truth.
You better go outside and polish the truth by yourself, because I'm not going to be part of polishing the truth. Is always the truth. There is no degree of honesty. It's just, you're honest. And to the point that you were making with the fighters, your fellow competitors, your fellow fighters were forcing you to be honest. Well, the world is going to force you to be honest one way or another. The younger generation, of course, it's funny because every generation thinks that, their parents say, well, wait until you get into the real world, right. And that's gone on for generations. But it's this thought that, all the kids are soft these days. Everybody gets a ribbon. Everybody gets a blue star. Everybody gets a trophy. Well, guess what? When you get out into the real world, everybody doesn't get a trophy. And that's the universal honesty. So if we're honest with kids as they're growing up, they're going to become, hopefully, more successful and more honest in their lives and in their own. And when I say let's be honest, we all have these, omissions of truth that we like to tell. I caught myself the other morning. I hike early in the morning, usually in the dark, unless it's in the summer. But I'm out there. I'm feeling really good about myself. It's 6 in the morning. I looked at it was 21 degrees, and I'm up hiking in the foothills. And I'm kind of congratulating myself. I'm going, oh man, you're doing it, dude. You're really rocking it. And I'm, almost hurting my arm, patting myself on the back as I do this hike. And then in the background, I hear these voices. I'm like, what the heck? Well, here comes 3 guys running by me. And what did my mind immediately do? I started making excuses to make it acceptable why they're running when I'm hiking. I'm walking, not slowly, but I'm walking. And I started saying, well, I'm 64 years old. They're probably 30. I weigh 190 pounds. They probably weigh 140. I started going through all these acceptable excuses for me. And then I almost stopped and just punched myself. I was like, what are you're coming up with lies that are acceptable to me. I'm not telling them to anyone else. And I realized they ran past me because on this particular day, they're more fit than me. They're more adapted to running and jogging and going up this hill than I am. And that's the brutal, you want to talk about being brutally honest. And it was kind of a clarifying moment for me where I said, okay, dude, quit. Just quit. Quit the excuses. Quit the lies. It's not because I trained so hard in the last week and I'm taking this hike, to go easier. It's not because I weigh more than them or because I'm older than them. Okay, let's just be honest. They're going up that hill faster than I am because they're more physically fit than I am at this point right now. They're more adapted to climbing a hill in running shoes than I am hiking. And so I guess my point is we all do these things, and to the degree that we can catch ourselves and go, no, that's not the truth. Let's make the truth be what we make decisions on. Let's make the truth. We've talked about weight. Now I'm talking about fitness. We touched before we started here about resolutions and about people coming into the gym and going, oh, I'm going to get fit. And it's interesting because the people, what I call the gym rats, the guys are going to be there every day, the ladies that are going to be there every day. And then we see the resolution people, the people that start in January. And it's interesting to watch what they wear because they're wearing Lululemon. They're wearing the fancy, the nice shirts. They've carried this thought into the gym that if I look the part, I can kind of get away with it. I won't look like the new kid. Well, they don't realize they look like the new person because of what they're wearing. Because when we're training at 5:30 in the morning, nobody cares what you're wearing. The weights don't care. We always say that the machine doesn't care if you're tired or not. The machine doesn't care if you had a good night's sleep or not. The machine is going to, exercise you, allow you to work out. The weights don't care if you're wearing Lululemon or if you're wearing worn out old Converse tennis shoes, And so this being truthful with yourself, we can't fake things, and the more that we just be honest going forward and allow that to build in our lives, then the universe is going to be more, hospitable with us. Our success is going to come easier as we're straightforward and honest. And I love it when I ride adventure bikes, and some of the guys I ride with are retired CEOs or CFOs, or they got C's in front of their names, and they're wonderful people to ride with because there are no excuses. We get on, we'll be out on a ride 60 miles in, and somebody tips over because we're going through a creek bed or something, and go, hey, what happened there? Lost my balance and tipped over. It's not, oh, well, my motorcycle, I don't have the latest model, and, I don't have great tires, or, there's none of that. There's just straightforward, you know what? I went in a little too fast. I lost my balance, fell over. I guess my ego got in front of me. That kind of just brutal honesty. And I guess taking that the next step is understanding that that's how success builds in our lives. And we want to surround ourselves, like you said, if you're gonna train as a fighter, what do you want?
Oh, you want the most brutal, ridiculously honest killer right next to you.
Right next to you. You know, my son, Division I baseball player, and I asked him, you know, what do you think was the most important part of your, you know, why were you such a good hitter? He's like, Dad, we had phenomenal pitchers. We faced the best pitchers in the league every day because they were on our team. That drove him. He you know, there was no excuses. He had to get better in practice because he was being pitched to by some of the best pitchers around. These kids got drafted. They're now, you know, working on their major league careers. But they were making honesty amongst their teammates, because even though they were teammates, even though they loved each other, even though they might have lived together, when you were in the batter's box and that guy was pitching, guess what he was doing? He was giving you his best to get you out. And he was trying to look his best while making you better. And that's really where we get when we're talking about, let's be honest, is I don't care about the outcome as much as I care about being honest with you. So with Roger, I'm not going to sit back and go, Roger, you look great. What have you been doing lately? You know, I'm probably going to say something like that, but I'm also going to say, listen, Roger, last time I saw you, you were a lot lighter than you are now. What's going on? You know, are you having trouble at home? Are you stressed? You know, do you, you know, is there some terrible disease that's,
right,
that, you know, that kind of thing. But to go beyond the socially acceptable level of omission or lying and just be honest and say, I care more about you and your well-being, whether it's financial, whether it's health, whatever. I care more about you than, and I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone rather than just going on down the road, rather than passing up an opportunity to be honest with you. You know, my son with baseball, he might have been facing one of his roommates, and he was definitely facing one of his teammates, but they weren't going to go soft on him. They were going to make him a better hitter, or he was going to look bad in front of the rest of the team or the coach. Okay, so are you willing to step out? And I guess what I'm asking is, would you rather have people around you that just love you and accept you, and no matter what's going on? What if you've got a friend that's, gosh, I don't know, heaven forbid, abusing their children? And you go, yeah, but he's a great guy. He's fun to have lunch with. I just choose not to talk about that with him.
right.
No. Let's be honest. Let's talk to him. Let's stop. And I guess that's my point, is we want to surround ourselves not with people that find us acceptable and find us happy and gregarious and all these different things. And, you know, we're big on social media, and we've got, you know, all of our selfies posted and that kind of thing.
Sure.
Let's talk about real life, and let's care enough to make you better and step out of that comfort zone. And instead of, you know, when we know that somebody's struggling and they just got a new job, and gosh, all of a sudden, what? There's a new vehicle in their driveway. And you go, hey, Bob, what'd you get there? Oh, that's whatever, $60,000 vehicle, whatever. Instead of saying, great, Bob, oh, can you take me for a ride in it? Maybe we step out of our zone and go, you know what? Instead of saying it's none of my business, because that's the easy way out. That's none of my business. Say, Bob, is that really the best thing to do right now? You just got a job. You've been struggling financially. I know you don't have any savings. Is a $60,000 car the best thing to do? You know, and so a lot of times we go through our lives, we say, well, I just want to be, you know, I just want to have friends. I just want to be nice. I want to be thought of as, you know, I've got one of my best friends, nice, very straight, as far when I say straight, not straight in terms of,
I got you.
Just
Straightforward guy.
But for him, being popular is way more important than being honest. he'll talk to me about his coworkers. He'll talk to me about his difficulties with his mom, but he won't talk to them. I say, are you having these same conversations with them? No, I could never talk to them.
I could never tell my mom this.
No, I can, my mom raised me. She's doing the best she can. I'm like, is she really doing the best she can? When she's smoked her whole life and you care about her, you're seeing that she's going downhill and she's not breathing as well and she's not as energetic. Step out of your comfort zone. Okay. And that's where this whole thought of, let's be honest. Because I really believe in our society today, I read about history and I read about people, like years ago, how they were, again, there was no political correctness. There was honesty, and then there were dishonest people. It was pretty easy to tell them apart. But in our society today, we've melted all this stuff together to make it socially acceptable. And even to the point that, I touched on earlier, they've almost weaponized the ability to call you something wrong when you're being honest. So, instead of noticing that Roger's gained 60 pounds, you say, oh, Roger, you look great. If you say he gained 60 pounds, that's offensive. There's popular singers these days, entertainers that are hugely overweight. You can't say that they're overweight because that's not correct. That's body shaming. Same thing with, questioning someone about how much they drink or, whatever, how they're treating their kids. I see kids being like whatever, mom's grabbing them by the arm and yelling at them or something in the supermarket, whatever. And it's easy to say, it's none of my business, I'll go on my way. Or should we be real honest and say, ma'am, it's probably not too good on your kid's arm to pull it like that and jerk them around. No, it's not any of my business. And
right. Maybe offer a helping hand. Can I help you with something?
Yeah. Could I, are you having a rough day? Right. And step out of my comfort zone. And maybe that's an extreme example. Maybe we don't do that, but at least with our friends, at least with our family, at least with the coworkers that we're around.
To the extent that we actually care about the individuals around us, we need a certain level of honesty to actually bring up our level of existence as well as theirs.
Exactly. We used to have a saying, when I was in school and, being taught to be a doctor, you have to care enough to not care.
Right.
And that's a problem with our world today is too many people care about what they're talked about or care about their reputation, or they don't care enough to step out and say, I care enough about you that I'm willing to talk to you about something honest,
right,
rather than letting it go.
Yeah, and just a quick point, because you've said a lot of great things. I had a friend actually, a fighting partner, training partner, who he had made some bad decisions with his family, and he was now divorced. And one in particular that he felt very bad about. And he deeply felt shame in this decision. And he asked me one day after training, everybody was gone, we were just chatting briefly, and I could tell something was bothering him, so I was kind of lingering around. And he said, started kind of asking me like, hey, do you tell, your wife everything we talk about? Because he didn't want this particular thing making it back to my wife, who he knew, and he liked her.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, man, first off, no, I don't. Right. And in order to attempt to make him comfortable, I said, listen, there's nothing you could say that would make me think poorly of you. So just relax. If you want to tell me something, tell me. And he told me, and, we talked about it a little bit, and he was very emotional about it. But on my way home, I realized, like, man, what did you do? You just took any value that your counsel may have actually had to him away. What you should have said is, I absolutely know there are things you could say that would make me think differently of you, but what you just said is not one of those things. You could have told me you murdered someone last night. That would have changed my opinion of you.
Yeah.
You didn't murder anyone. And what you did, yeah, you're not happy about it. And yes, it had consequences, but I don't think you're a worse person. You know, what you did is totally in line with my view of fallible humans. Okay. And it's one of those things we're so comfortable saying, like, you could never do. Yes, you could. You absolutely could do things. You absolutely, and it's such a lie to tell people you could never do anything that would make, like, dude. And what value are we as trusted counsel if the people we're around were like, I'm not a judgment machine. I couldn't even tell you if you did something wrong because nothing you could ever do would bother me. It's like, then we become useless. You might as well just tell your stuffed animal. He'll never judge you.
It's, and what that brought up was when someone says, well, actually two different things. When someone says, can I be honest with you? It's like, what the heck? Does that imply that you've been lying to me up to this point? Oh, do you mind if I'm honest with you? I would hope you're honest with me all the time. But what that means is I'm about to say something that makes me uncomfortable. So why not just say that? Right. Instead of saying, hey, can I be honest with you? Say, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I hope you don't beat me up for it. I hope you don't hate me for it, but I want to be honest with you. Bam. But you shouldn't even have to say, I'm going to be honest with you, because hopefully you've developed that relationship that they expect you to be honest with them. The other one, the second one, was when somebody says, can I tell you a secret? And my first response is no. Don't.
I love that you have that experience too. I'm like, no, if whoever told you this implied or told you expressly to not share that, I don't want to know it. I don't want to know it because, by the way, that breaks down the whole fabric of my understanding of what you're going to do if I confide in you.
Yeah. Well, and that also breaks down your ability to be honest with someone else.
Right.
Because someone says, listen, this is a secret. Don't tell anybody. And then someone else asks you regarding this subject. Right. And you go, I swore I wouldn't tell anybody. Okay, wait a minute. Now you've stepped, someone has told you something that's whatever, possibly underhanded or obviously they don't want it to be known. And it's different if they say, hey, I got, my wife or my husband a present, that's coming up on their birthday. Right. Don't tell them about it. Okay, that's perfectly legit.
Sure.
But if somebody says, listen, can I tell you a secret? And it's not about a present coming up for a birthday. Well, guess what? No, don't tell me a secret, because if someone asks me about it, I'm going to be honest. Right. If I know about it, I'm going to be honest. I tell people, I don't play poker. I don't bluff. If you hear it from me, it's straightforward. Right. And whether I'm negotiating a deal or representing someone in a lease negotiation or a real estate purchase or whatever it is, I'm going to be straightforward and honest with someone. I'm not going to bluff.
Right.
And people are like, well, no. My hope is they see that honesty and they respect it. And, one of those is that people will come back and do business with you again, or people will come back and have a conversation with you again, because they know I'm going to listen. I'm going to be straightforward with you. And I would hope that if you don't see me for 5 years and then we run into each other and you go, dude, you're not looking so good. Right. Be honest with me. And I'm going to say, really? Wow, I haven't noticed what's going on. I'm not going to say, well, Matt, why are you so mean? Why do you have to be mean like that? Why can't you just say something nice? Well, I could say something nice, but this is what I noticed. Well, Matt, I appreciate you having this talk with me.
Yeah, this has been great.
We're gonna call the podcast Let's Be Honest. We're going to talk about different things in life, whether it involves family or relationships, whether it involves finances, whether it involves business, and just talk about the degree that it helps us in terms of being more successful in our lives. Whatever success means to you or me might be different, but there are universal laws of success, and the more honest we are, and the more we're able to talk about that. And that's really the purpose of why we're having these discussions, is to bring it out and open it up. And then, if you will, hopefully move society forward, or at least our group of listeners forward in terms of being honest with each other.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for including me today.
Thanks.